Good morning. It's Monday morning, and it's the day after releasing the video on building this banquette. And when I made the video that you watched yesterday, if you watched it, the Scrap Bin channel video talking about this project, I hadn't had a chance to look through the comments on that video. And as expected, I got a lot of comments from people, well, not a lot, a few comments from people questioning the strength of this because it's floating. It doesn't have any, legs underneath it, whether it's going to stay up. And so I thought I would make this video not to prove anything, but to kind of demonstrate that things are stronger. Okay, people have a tendency to go to both extremes. They either grossly underestimate the strength of something, and then on the other end, they grossly overestimate the strength of something. You'll see that often in wood, where they'll overlook the fact that wood has a strength axis, where it'll split along the grain, but not across the grain. You have to cut it across the grain to make it, or you could really forcefully break it, but it'll easily split along the grain. This is something that they don't see because they lack the experience. And this misunderstanding about the strength of things is tied to how much experience you actually have in building things. So I have a lot of experience building things. So when I designed this, I knew that it was going to be strong enough, without any doubt. With all the things that I did here, which add up one after the other, I knew that it was going to be strong enough. And I knew the walls were strong enough to support it. You got 2x6 wall there, 2x4 mostly wall behind here. No problem holding up this bench and all the weight that you would put on it. Now you could easily fit, okay, say I'm here on the corner, right on the edge, right? And there's nothing underneath. You can see, well, I can get down there. There's nothing holding this up. I could sit here. Someone could sit here. You could say it could comfortably sit, okay, well-spaced 3 people. At most 5 people. Because you get me here, someone else here, like 3 people over on this longer leg, okay? So that's 5 people. Average male weight here in Canada is around 190 pounds, which is around 85 kilograms. So I don't know what that is combined, okay? Close to 900 pounds or something, so no problem. Me sitting here right now, I've lost weight over the past 6 months, around 30 pounds, so I'm quite a bit lighter than I used to be, but I'm still north of 200. So you can say I think I'm around, I don't have a scale to weigh myself, but I would say I'm around 210 sitting here now. And beside me, because I put these, I went for groceries yesterday and I just put everything everywhere. Whatever horizontal surface was available, like this, I just put it there. So, other than the floor, except for these bottles that you see right here, okay? So, these things here are around, I don't know, there's 24 bottles of 500 milliliters. Water is around, I don't know how much it is. I know how much these things weigh though. Each one of these is 8.8 pounds. So I've got 8 here, so that's a total of 70 pounds. These things, we'll call them 10 pounds each, okay? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to cross my legs because I'm sitting fully on this and my legs are up, okay? So just to kind of prove this, like I said, I don't have anything to prove, but this might put people's, thoughts in perspective because that's the thing that's lacking a lot lately. It's a real world perspective. People don't have any experience in the real world with doing things. Watching videos on YouTube and, talking in forums, that's not real world experience, guys. Real world experience is building stuff, seeing how it works, okay? Or working with other people that are building stuff. So here I am, 210, 220. I can't even lift it up, so it's more than 10 pounds. 230. So this is this is kind of my old weight. All right, and I'm jostling here. And is it coming down off the wall? No. Is a kid jumping on this going to be able to knock it off the wall? It would have to be a pretty big kid. Okay? I know you're not allowed to say fat anymore, so it would be a big kid. Anyway, so I'm going to put this down here again. And I'm going to try to get all of these water bottles up here. So each one of these is 8 pounds. So we'll put them here, 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 here. That's 4, 5. There. 8. So 7, that's 109, that's 290 pounds right here on the corner. Okay, just me, plus those. And is it giving out? No. Is it cracking? No. Am I uncomfortable? Yes. Mostly my legs crumpled up underneath me here. So I'm going to undo myself and talk about this a little bit more because I've got other things to say about this. Okay, there we go. Ah, relief. Whew. Anyway, so you got to look at everything. It's like a house, okay? When you build a house, all right? You look at a 2x4 that they used to build houses with, and they'll say, that's not very strong. How are they building a house out of that? Well, it's not just the 2x4. It's the entire structure. It's the entire system. And the same thing here. I started off here by attaching the platform at the bottom. And I attached that to the wall with screws into the studs. Now, I also put glue on there, and I actually had a question about that. Like, why would you use glue on there when the glue is just sticking to the paint? And to answer that, I said, well, you have to understand what the screws are actually doing. The screws are not holding the thing on, well, it's not like, the screws act as like a pin that goes through the wall and into the stud. So it resists shearing off, as in it resists that straight down force of gravity. But the main function of the screw, so that first part that I just talked about is one part of it. But the main function of what a screw does is it holds the part tight to the wall. And I talked about this in another video. It's called stiction. It's where something is pressed tight against something and it resists movements. Okay, so it's that stiction that you're looking for, that being pressed tight to the wall. That's what the screw does. Because if you could substitute the screw for a clamp that goes behind the drywall with the fixed jaw, and the moving jaw goes up against the part to hold it tight against the wall, it would be almost as strong. It wouldn't be as strong because it didn't have that pin effect that you get when you drive a mechanical fastener through a part and into the wall. So it doesn't have that anti-shear part. But you can also increase the amount of stiction you'll get when pressing the part against the wall by putting a glue in there, putting an adhesive in there. And that's the reason for the glue. The glue is not there to hold the part on the wall, it's to add to the stiction. So that when the force of whatever weight is pushing down, it's not going to move. It's going to further add to that strength of it not moving. And it will also help with the pullout. right? So there's several different forces at work here in different directions, and all of this is combined in the system that you set up there with the screw holding the part of the wall. It seems very simple on the surface, but it's actually quite complex. And in understanding that, you can know that, you know, your typical cabinet, you can hold it up on the wall, usually, if it's freestanding, with just 2 screws, right? Almost regardless of how much weight you put in that cabinet, there's so much surface area on the back of the cabinet that's contacting the wall behind it with just the force of those 2 screws holding it on, and that it's not gonna come down. So, same thing here. Glue adds to the amount of stiction holding power you have. That's the reason why I use it. Now, the reason specifically why I use construction adhesive, and in particular that construction adhesive that I used in the video, which was the strongest variety of polyurethane construction adhesive, is that it's actually stronger in some regards than wood glue. Wood glue is technically stronger, but it lacks some impact resistance. The construction adhesive that I'm using has a lot of impact resistance. So it absorbs some of the shock that you'll get from impacts, like somebody bouncing on the seat like that. Also, it has much better gap filling properties. So in general, when you're doing something like this, and you'll see carpenters doing this on sites around North America at least, they use a lot of that stuff, because when you're building something in, it's going to fit perfectly to outward appearances, but very much like I chipped out the top of this framing here to get it down so I could put the top on. Underneath, it may not be perfect. So you need a glue that bridges that gap, and when it sets up, it is strong enough to hold the thing together, and also has a little bit of shock and impact resistance. So glue that I use both types. I actually use 3 types. I use that strongest version of construction adhesive to build the frame and put the parts together and attach the thing to the wall. And then I use the standard, the usual type of the brown colored construction adhesive for much of the rest of it, plus wood glue where I needed things to dry fast. Okay, now I almost always prefer to use the regular type of polyurethane construction adhesive because it gives me a long open time. It's just as strong for almost all uses as regular wood glue, and it doesn't drip all over the place, which is handy when you're gluing up a lot of different stuff in different places, and you don't want to be cleaning up puddles of it off the floor, say especially here, gluing down the seat and stuff like that. So getting back to the structure here, the platform was glued and screwed to the back of the wall. It stuck out, it cantilevered out, unsupported here, free flying. That's where the back, the structure that made up the back came in. It's angled at that nearly 10 degrees away from the top, up at the top here to here. So that's a span of around 6 inches out that it attached on the seat right here. Okay, so you got to look at it like it's like almost like a truss. Okay, so the attachment point is at the back on the wall. This part comes out like a strut or like a brace further out on the thing, and it attaches solidly there. I use 3 screws in each joint plus that really strong glue. And up at the top, I put 2x3, well, it was a 2x6 ripped down the middle, cleats on the wall, once again glued and screwed to the studs in the back. And then the things were glued right on the ends. Like, another way of doing it would be to put a cleat full length across the wall, right? But then that would compromise how you attach these upright supports, these struts that go down that form the back that also support the seat. Okay, so that's the reason why I did it in pieces like that. but you wind up with something that's stronger overall because you've got a very solid attachment with the plywood to those cleats. Now, another question that came up is why I use plywood to begin with. Solid wood would be stronger here. Yes, it would, but solid wood is also prone to splitting, especially when you're driving screws at the end, and especially in something that is subject to shock, like your brat kid bouncing on the thing, hey, or somebody attempting to make you look like a fool by doing the Wandel jumps test, right? So plywood resists that splitting because it's cross-grain structure, right? Especially at the ends. You got to look at where I attached it up here at the top into there. If it splits there, that would release it. If it splits at the bottom, same thing. And there's a lot of leverage on those joints at the bottom as well. So yeah, you want to have something there that resists that splitting. And like I gave this a lot of thought. Like I said, there was 3 years between I started planning it and started building it. So I had a lot of time to think about it. I got to take a break and turn off my beeper. All right, so to continue with where I left off, I think, talking about the way things went together here, like I said, it's one thing after the other. They all add on top of each other. And what you wind up with is something that's very strong in the end. You can't look at things individually and say, well, this is weak, this is weak. Maybe on their own they are. Like if you take a single, say, rib section of this thing here, it's not going to support one person. But when you add it to all the other ones, especially in a corner like this, is very strong overall. Now, the other things that people would overlook here are the 3/4 inch plywood that I used on the seat. After I put the seat on the wall and after I got the ribs in place on the wall behind it, that was the main part of the support structure. But by solidly gluing that 3/4 inch plywood down to the seat supports, what you also added was some strength torsionally, okay? So when I sit on the end here, it wants to push down, right? My weight is trying to push down on the bench over here. But the plywood, being strong torsionally, will resist that. It'll resist that twisting because over in the corner, it's staying flat. Believe me, it's not twisting. But over here on the corner, it would try to counteract any twisting that's going on here, right? Same thing with the back panel that I put up here, which is only 1/2 inch. But it also adds a lot of, like it spreads the load between all of these struts that went down to support the thing. So not only is this strut carrying the weight on the corner, it's also kind of helping the one beside it, right? That's what, that's when you look at the way houses are built, when you look at a floor, how a floor is built in particular, what they do is they put the joists in, the joists span from wall to wall, right? To add strength, a lot of strength to the floor, you put sheathing on the top. When you put sheathing on the top, it adds a tremendous amount of weight, strength to that floor structure. It keeps it from flexing. And to add even more, you put bridging between, right in the center, or 2 rows of bridging, like 1/3 and 1/3 of the way. And the bridging shares the load between the members. So same thing happens here. Now, the biggest thing that I'm sure people think about is how this thing is attached to the wall. And is the wall strong enough? Okay. Well, of course the wall is strong enough because it's a house. It's attached at the top, it's attached at the bottom. The attachment point here is relatively short, so it doesn't have a lot of leverage on this wall, especially when you look at the lever arm here of this seat. It's not very long. But you have to understand about leverage and how this all works, as in there's not much load up at the top up there, like to pull the wall down this way by me sitting on it. And like I've already established, it's well attached, it's well fixed to the wall, so it's not going to drop down quickly. So the only thing left is for it to lever off the wall, as in let go up here, but I put all those cleats there and all that glue and all those screws, and they're all screwed right into studs. So that's going to be very difficult to do. Now, if this bench was longer, like if I could sit out here somewhere and really jump up and down on it hard like that, then you would pull it off the wall, almost certainly. It would overcome that, and it would overcome that twisting, that anti-twisting torsion that you would get from the sheet of 3/4 inch plywood. You would have too much leverage. So that's the reason why, leverage works, right? Because you get more mechanical advantage. And then of course, after I had all the plywood on, the seat and the back, I started putting on the solid maple that wraps around the whole thing and, cleans up the appearance, but it also adds a lot of structure. Now, I mentioned not having the back here in one solid cleat that fastens to the wall. That would be stronger as regards to the cleat attaching to the wall. But the solid piece of maple that's on top, which is probably equal in strength to the same length 2x4, is one length, and it's solidly glued to the framing underneath. So that carries that load right across, right? Same thing here in the corner. I went to the trouble of making that extra strong by putting dominoes in there because I didn't want it to crack open when somebody's bouncing on it, right? When somebody's jumping on it, or when someone comes in and then, I'm so tired, when they really put some impact force on there. I don't want the joint opening up. So, and by doing that, by making that joint extra strong, it adds to the support that I'm getting right here on the weakest part of the bench, right on the corners. This one and that one over there. So yeah, that along with the front, the solid wood along the front, once again, as strong as a solid, I think this being nearly 3.5 inches wide, 3/4 inch thick maple is as strong as a similar length piece of 2x6. So that's what you got to look at there, how much strength there is overall. Anyway, I think I covered everything that I wanted to say about this, and you shouldn't take it as me trying to prove how strong this was, even though I think I more than did that in this video by me bouncing on it and putting bottles of water up here, and then plus this weight over here. It was more to talk about a specific problem that I see over and over and over again. It's where people assume that they understand something that they simply don't understand. And they overlook all kinds of factors that are crucial to understanding when you want to make it like a proper assessment of how strong something is. Like, you can't ignore things, and you can't see things in isolation. You have to see everything together, and you have to understand how strong things are to begin with. Like I said, that lack of perspective comes from not having any actual experience doing these things, building stuff. Because when you start building stuff, you find out that, first of all, okay, how strong things are, how strong they need to be, because you have things fail. You have things that break, and then okay, that has to be stronger. And then you start thinking about things. All my years in construction, I didn't just show up in the morning, put in the time, clowning around with my coworkers, and then go home at the end of it. I was paying attention. I was paying attention to lots of different things, how things were built in the way they were built, how things were designed, and why they were designed that way. So this all carries forward to where I am today. Right? I'm not saying that I'm, super engineer here or anything, but I have a very good, very detailed understanding of how strong things need to be. And this is more than strong enough.